A ceasefire has been declared, but are markets really buying the calm? With crop conditions shifting, weather playing a bigger role, and global tensions still bubbling, it doesn't feel like we're out of the woods just yet. I'm Johanna Bota, and joining us to discuss what's next for crops across the globe is StoneX's VP of Clearing and Execution Sales, Bertrand Oesterle. Welcome, Bertrand. Nice to have you back. I want to start with the ceasefire that is currently still in place, as of right now, this morning on Wednesday, between Iran and Israel. So what or how have oilseeds and grains been reacting?
So as you mentioned, it is indeed a ceasefire, and for the moment markets are calmer, but the reaction has been really quick. We've gone from 11 days of upside to a day of simply washing away all the upside. So the markets have been basically resting assured by the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is not being closed, and the initial risk about fertilizer is for the moment unfounded. So markets have corrected, they've corrected very quickly in energy, and that has fed into spillover pressure into our markets. And if I give you some figures, it will highlight how quickly we've fallen. So if we look at soybean oil for September, we were in the 47.90 area before the war started. We went up to 55.60, we're around 52.30 as we walk in the room. Okay. So there's been a huge amount of yo-yo movement, and we've got quite a few gaps in those charts. If we look at corn, corn was around 426 on September pre-war. We've made a new low of 411.75 yesterday, and this morning another new contract low of 409.5. So again, we've dropped very quickly. And if we look, for example, at Paris wheat, pre-war we were at 198.75 on September. We rallied to 210.5. Yesterday we traded through 200. Again today we've touched 199.25.
So does this mean then we're back to trading fundamentals for oilseeds and grains?
We are. However, there are still geopolitical elements that we will need to consider. First of all, we need to find out if this peace agreement is going to last. And then we can't ignore the rest of the geopolitical tensions that we've spoken about over the past few months. There's still no solution for Ukraine, Russia, and the tariffs from Trump, the pause is coming to expiration pretty soon. And are we going to go back to the Trump tariff tantrums, or 10 Trumps as people call them?
You mentioned soy oil a moment ago. So what update can you bring us on oilseeds?
So when we look at oilseeds in general, we look at the US. We have been looking at weather models and so on, and some people had concerns that maybe it would get too hot and so on. That has not materialized. For the moment, the crop conditions in the US for soybeans are still 66% good to excellent, no change from the previous week. It's up from 63% for the 5-year average. And for the week ahead, the weather is benign, is beneficial. Then when we look at Argentina, we've seen an Argentine crop which is almost completely harvested, and people are looking at a 50 million ton mark. So again, estimates of yields which may be a bit better than initially anticipated. If we look at rapeseed, the Mars body of the European Commission has upped the yield estimate for Europe in rapeseed by a touch, 3.18 ton per hectare compared to 3.17 previously. And the only hiccup so far seems to be Australia, where they still talk of hot and dry weather, but there's still plenty of time.
Okay, and what about corn?
So corn is very similar to soybean in the US. The weather is benign, the weather is generally favorable. The conditions have slightly come off a little bit. Corn conditions in the US are 70% good to excellent. They've lost 2% from the previous week, but it still remains well above the 5-year average of 65%. Then if we look at Argentina, the corn crop is well through the halfway mark, and again we are talking of potentially better yields than initially anticipated. Production estimates are still around the 49 million ton mark. It's a big figure. And then when we look at Brazil, we have a second safrinha crop which is currently being harvested. Harvest progress is slow compared to previous years, but we have analyst estimates which are showing us a much bigger crop for that second corn crop. We had, for example, AgroConsult coming in at 123.3 million tons this week. That would be a new record, and that would be some 20 million tons more than the previous year.
Okay, so far all of this sounds pretty bearish. So is there anything supportive at all?
In corn, there may be a story to follow.
Okay.
So our US colleagues have mentioned a CWG report. So CWG is one of the weather forecasters in the US. And they are pointing that Europe could become an issue from a maize/corn point of view. We have estimates showing that June could be the hottest on record in Europe,
okay,
but also part of Ukraine. So we could see some damage being done to the maize corn crop in Europe and Ukraine. And this is something we're going to have to watch out for. It could be the next bounce. It could be the next element that could come and create issues in terms of feed, rations, or production simply. So when we look at the corn conditions or the maize conditions we've got from France, which is a little bit of the barometer that we have, they were 83% good to excellent this week compared to 85 last week. So they start pretty high, they're still pretty good. And I think that's for us to assess whether or not there is a real heat and hot weather issue in Europe. We need to look at those conditions, see how they're going to perform over the coming weeks.
Okay, and last but not least, let's talk about wheat. What do you have there?
So wheat's been very interesting once again. We always use our SEPDEC Paris wheat as the barometer of the specs. We're still around -12, so it hasn't given us an awful lot of an idea of fund short covering as such. So we looked at the open interest, and the open interest for September has been very interesting. We lost about 35,000 lots of open interest through the past 11 days of war, but yesterday we went back up by 9,000 lots. So we're going to have a Euronext update on Paris COT later today at 4 o'clock. And I think that the short covering we've seen, which was war linked, is not necessarily just fund short covering. My feeling, and we'll see at 4 o'clock if I'm right or wrong, is that there's been some fund short covering, but also been some trade short covering. I've got the feeling that the trade got accustomed to looking at the funds selling rallies. They joined the process, so rally, sell, rally, sell, rally, sell. Bad luck, the war started, they got caught. Yep. So I think that it's not just the funds that got caught on this last war rally. I think the trade got caught as well, and I think that's going to be showing in the 4 o'clock figures today. And when we look at fundamental data, there's been some big figures coming out over the past week, especially out of Russia. So Russia has been misleading in the sense that the Krasnodar region again published a state of emergency. It is mostly for farmers to be able to claim on insurance. And in parallel, we've seen two estimates of production which are way bigger than they used to be before. So we've seen Argus coming in with 84.8 million tons of production for the new crop in Russia. That's some 4.5 million tons more than they had previously anticipated. And then the Agriculture Ministry came in at a whopping 90 million tons. So this week, 84.8 to 90 million tons. It very much echoes the bearish view that we've been talking about of 85 to 95. Next door to Ukraine, the harvest has started. That's going to as well create some pressure. And then if we look at Europe, we've had some comments from our merchants in Poland saying that northern Poland is looking better than anticipated. They've sent us some nice pictures of fields, and those fields are actually looking pretty good.
Okay.
In Germany, we have seen some benefit from the recent rains 2 weeks ago. The Bulgarians, the Romanians are still telling us that they are in for a good crop. Romania may have a record crop, 13 to 15 million tons compared to 9.29 last year. And it's just Western Europe where people are asking questions. So we've been asking our French participants what they've seen so far. And the barley harvest is ongoing. The yields are pretty okay, and therefore it bodes well for potential winter wheat harvesting in France as well.
Right. And what about the US?
So the US have had some issues with mosaic streak virus, so that has still been talked about, but generally speaking the conditions are good. They've dropped about 3% in winter wheat and in spring wheat over the past week, but the weather is shifting to dry weather. We should see a pickup in harvest progress. And when we look further south, the Argentines are planting very quickly as well. There's some 60+% planted, and the last element we would look at is again Australia, where it's still dry and hot, but there's still plenty of time.
And with all the tensions and, well, the geopolitical tensions, have we seen some consumer concerns about securing supplies?
We have through the 11 days of war, and mostly from the Middle East and North Africa. So we've seen some governments trying to simply reassure. So Iraq, for example, came on the news blotter to say we have 6 months of stocks to cater for domestic demand. So trying to reassure. We've seen some odd tenders like Oman buying 110,000 tons of wheat. And more importantly, we've seen a lot of talk about Egypt. Egypt coming in to buy some 300,000 tons to 1 million tons over the past couple of weeks. And the estimate is that it is either Russian, Ukrainian or Romanian, so very much Black Sea origin. So our bears would say again, not so great for France.
And just to conclude, what are you looking forward to next week?
So over the next week or the next few weeks, we're going to watch that European corn story. But also we have an important USDA report on Monday, on the 30th of June. It's going to be the quarterly and the planting update report. This report is less important than the one on the 31st of March, but it's still an important report because it gets as a confirmation of what figures we had 3 months ago. And for the moment, the pre-report analyst estimates that we've seen indicate that the quarterly stock should show a higher wheat and soybean stock figure, a slightly lower corn figure. And for the planting, we may see a slightly larger estimate for corn and soybean planted areas in the US.
All right. Thank you, Bertrand. As always, a lot of good information and lots of things to keep our eyes on. And thank you for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.